Hi, everyone. I'm Lola, and today we're going to talk about Chefs, which is a project I run with some friends from college. Pedro, my co founder, is here today. Um, we're going to think about how we're on a mission to encourage our generation to learn from each other in new kinds of ways. So I see my life as one long, perpetual, ever present seminar discussion, and everything is a conversation. Sometimes I listen, sometimes I talk, and I'm always moving fluidly between the two. I like to ask relentless questions. And I like to share, and conversation is this living, breathing thing. Um, Online engagement, though, does not seem to value that. And we live in this digital age that's wrought with sound bites and slacktivism, and participation online is passive and asynchronous. And to me, this reveals a really big missed opportunity for genuine connection. Um, and these existing digital spaces just add to the wildly common issue of most people not giving themselves enough credit. We tend to underestimate our ability to give to the world, to be of value, and to be a value add by virtue of our mere existence. So we started Chefs, which is a platform for college students to lead and join intimate conversations on topics that they care about with peers all over the world. These sessions are happening every weekend, and the subject matter organically shifts, often mirroring the moment. We try to make it really clear that to lead a discussion, you don't have to be an expert. But what my generation can offer at our age and at this time in our lives is this really ravenous enthusiasm and curiosity for our emerging interests. And we recognize that and encourage that. So any college student with a chef's account can host or attend events. And to lead a conversation, students will use our event builder to come up with all the logistical stuff, create a title and description. We then review and approve these events, and then they go live into our site, and any student can book a ticket. So people really talk about everything. In many ways, it reminds me of what we're doing right now, which is quite meta. From racial capitalism and wealth redistribution to experimental dining to cryptography, human rights, the range of content is really sort of far and wide. So the events themselves end up being about 7 students from pretty diverse backgrounds and fields of study and global universities. They all hop on a single video call, and the host is there to catalyze the conversation. And then sort of the discussion is really shaped by collective participation of the group. But at the core of what we're doing is this yearning for more intentional and meaningful and stimulating forums for non hierarchical dialogue and informal learning. And we're trying to invert the way that people meet each other by cutting all the icebreaker BS. And so at these chefs events, you get in a room and all of a sudden you're hearing what people think, how people feel about the topic at hand, without really knowing any intimate details about them. And then slowly, naturally, by the end of the session, you sort of peel back and maybe do get to know some more specific things about the people who are there. Um, I think that the world hasn't yet created a culture nor a platform around instilling bravery, confidence, and self worth in young people through getting them to open up their minds. And that's sort of what we're trying to do by creating and consolidating these powerful, dispersed conversations into a kind of scalable platform and trying to become sort of the number one space for how and where young people will discuss issues that they care about. I don't want this to be a pitch, but so you do know, we've grown really fast. We started with 1 month of in person events back in February, and then a couple months of virtual events in May and July. And then, in an attempt to integrate these events into people's regular lives, we started having events every weekend. We've also had a couple festivals. Um, and so I've noticed that these events really end up functioning as catalysts for what feels like depthful community building and creative collaboration. And participants have organically started study groups and email chains and book clubs with people that they've met at these events. We've also built out an ambassador program of essentially chef super users that are super psyched about this, plugged into their communities, and kind of are tentacles for our mission and spreading it around young people around the world. Um, I love to imagine the potential for this in the physical realm, a chef's cafe, maybe, where each table has an assigned theme and you sit at each one based on what you want to talk about, or like a pop up unconference where people move fluidly between conversations. I think I've spent a lot of this year. I'm currently living in an intentional community in San Francisco, has spent some time at Agape, and I'm thinking a lot about world building and societal structures and how and why people organize and come together. And the biggest thing that I feel like I can contribute to the world at this moment in time, is trying to mobilize a bit of a culture shift among my generation in their confidence and willingness to challenge themselves by engaging deeply through taking what they know, sharing it with others, and learning from each other. And so the larger goal here is to aggregate the excitement and passion and intelligence of people my age and begin to create these intentional spaces for us to learn from one another, as is our motto. Whoa, and then I guess it's gonna show some graphics, but that's it. Thanks. Yay, that was so
Oh man. If you already did it. All right, good job. I'm screen sharing, and now we can see your face if we double click on you. Take it away, Jake.
All right, so here we are again. You can hit the hand raise if you have a question in the little icon thing at the bottom, or you can come up to the front here by the rug and we can get it kicked off. Looks like Preston has a question, so take it away, Preston.
Hey, Lola, that was really awesome. I love it. I had commented to people near me that I want to go to every single one of those talks that you are organizing. That sounds awesome for people that aren't college students, but I totally love the idea of getting specifically college students together, and by creating your specific subset, you can have a little bit more control over the feel of the community. But I want to ask the obvious question is about the greater internet asshole theory. That is, if anytime you take people, put them on the internet, give them pseudo-anonymity, and people don't know who they are, then suddenly they all become assholes. So I was wondering how you manage that potential for toxicity, knowing that that's one of the things we're immediately trying to address.
Totally. I guess I've been asked that before, and I guess I try to think of it as sort of like this limit, like in math, that we're probably approaching, but maybe haven't hit yet, and I guess ideally will never hit. We have not run into that being a problem yet, and I think the group ends up being pretty self-selecting, and because people have to put in the effort to show up, show their face, and not sort of hide behind a screen and have to actively engage and participate, that tends to create a culture of people who are sensitive and generous and thoughtful. Maybe we're lucky to have not run into that as an issue, but the people who have joined thus far, and it's really grown organically from our friends to friends of friends to people at other schools, it's been a very giving forum. An interesting facet maybe of what you're saying is like thinking about the potential for super controversial topics to be discussed, and we've had certain situations where people have proposed sessions that are discussing really controversial topics, and then have like put in a really conscious effort to have people from both like maybe sides of the issue there. And we had one session where like someone from one side was not able to come, so the host decided to not actually have it. So the point is, haven't run into assholes yet. The people who are participating in these kinds of sessions, even though they are open to everyone, seem to sort of follow the unspoken code of respect. And then also, I think it's actually more of an exciting sort of opportunity to think about how we might allow for the discussion of really controversial and tricky issues in functional and respectful way. Yeah.
No, that's great. It's nice to see sort of a new alternative norm developing just for the people who need it. So I'm so glad you're doing it, and it's great to see that it's actually working.
Thanks. I will also say, because in some ways we kind of like ask a lot of the people participating, aka like the host really has to write a description and put an effort into framing the conversation, and then the people who show up, they have to be there for an hour and talk. It sort of filters out trolls, because trolls want to be like bullshit people, fake people that contribute nothing in really short bursts, and we're kind of trying to ask people to be human and be present. So that's a good way of eliminating a lot of the potential for dirty contributors, at least so far.
Awesome. All right, Chris, take it away.
All right. So one thought I have is with small groups that could also limit the trollish. Like if you have 1,000 people, it feels a lot more anonymous than if you have 7. But my question was, have you given any thought to bringing in maybe one person per group who's not a college student, who has maybe more depth or expertise or just a different perspective. Because I would totally volunteer to be that person.
Hmm. Well, I guess if we ever do it, we have one person in the pipeline, which is great. Um, I would say for now, part of the appeal for us as maybe also like participants of what we're building is that there is some sense of like symmetric information across the participants because no one there is expected to know like perfectly what it is they're talking about. And then that creates an atmosphere of like comfort within participating or contributing your thoughts because it's very much like recognized or explicitly understood as a place to have a bit of a jam session of thought exchange as opposed to like a more hierarchical presentation of information and then kind of Q&A structure. And I think it's in some ways it's the very fact that it is limited to a particular demographic that like makes that possible.
So I wasn't thinking of bringing in an expert to talk or present, just to be a part of the group, and that's why I said one person per group.
Yeah.
So that they wouldn't be able to overwhelm the group.
Yeah, no, it's a cool idea. I think maybe Pedro, we should think about something like that. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, looks like Sonia has got a question.
My question is whether people will age out of this. So now you've got this cohort, and then in a few years that cohort's not going to be in college anymore. Facebook sort of we used to be for college students, and then now it's for everybody. So how are you going to control for that aging out factor?
Great question. Definitely thinking about a similar model of building like a solid brand or culture because you're doing it with a really well-defined demographic at first, and then using that as like a test bed or a proof of concept to then expand to other groups of people. So far, I mean, the line has been like a teensy bit blurred because we had people who were seniors last year participated on Chefs and then have kept coming this year, even though they're technically alumni. I think we're actually maybe less interested in the fact that people are in college. It's just like a pretty easy way to, in one fell swoop, like consolidate or quickly name this demographic of people who are maybe between the ages of like 18, 23, 24. But definitely in the long run, we have a vision for, yeah, I mean, if you join Chefs when you're 20 and you spend 2-3 years having really great conversations with people here, then you should be able to continue it. So again, sticking with this demographic now to prove this out. The demographic itself also like then becomes part of the mission, at least for now. But yeah, definitely want to create a space for people to continue doing this after. We had had a couple high school seniors sneak in like undercover, which has been cool to just see that they want to participate in something like this.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, it makes me
actually this one high schooler sent us a really, really long email where he was like begging to participate. He was like, I think this should be open to people my blah, blah, blah. And then I think he ended up realizing that like right now we actually don't even, we say that, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but we say that we are checking for .edu emails, but we're actually not. So there's nothing that's preventing people from making an account, which is definitely a security problem that we should highly, highly think about. But he ended up making an account without us even letting him, and he's gone to a bunch of events and has actually become like a bit of an active participant here. And I think that's super cool. So we let him on.
Yeah, makes you wonder, like, people outside of college probably need this too, which is a whole nother conversation. But yeah, things to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, sounds good. We are over our short time, so if we want to go to the QA lounge to keep it going, we'll take a short break for food and bathrooms, and we could go over to QA lounge and keep this going. It looks like Connor had a question as well too. So
thank you so much. Well, I think it is. Yeah, let's take 5 for some Q&A lounging, and then we can keep going with these wonderful presentations.